What if Count Dooku told Anakin that Palpatine was the Sith Lord? Part 2: Darker Days. Our story descends into darkness once more. A lone, hooded figure strode silently across the scorched metal corridors of the Mustafar Control Center. His lips curled into a twisted smile. The sound that escaped him was little more than a growl, more than a chuckle. How arrogant had he been to believe he understood the grand design. How foolish to think he was ever meant to see the end of the grand plan. He was never the architect, only the blade. A pawn meant to be sacrificed when the game was done. And yet he breathed. And yet he survived. The betrayal of his master, the fall of the Jedi Order, and the collapse of the Republic. Where others perished, he endured. Not by fate, not by mercy, but by rage alone. A snarl spread across his face as the name came to his unbidden lips. The Jedi. Their annihilation had been a balm to his torment. Their screams, music. Their corpses, justice. A hiss of a hydraulic broke the silence as he approached the chamber doors. They slid open with a shriek that echoed like a scream from the underworld. Inside, the enclave of shadows turned their heads towards him. The Crimson Syndicates had assembled. Black Sun, the Pikes, the Hutts, the remains of the Crimson Dawn, criminal titans, more treacherous than the last, had all gathered. Perfect. He had stepped into the chamber, the light casting on the metal carved into the ruined remains of his face. The hood fell back, revealing a face twisted by war, half flesh, half machine. His one remaining eye gleamed like a dying star. The scent of fear became suffocating. Some flinched, others froze, but all knew who he was. He was Maul, the Shadow Lord. He inhaled deeply, letting their terror wash over him like a fire. Then he spoke, his voice sharp, rasping, and laced with venom. The Republic at last is dead. Law and order have rotted with it. The Jedi are ash, and in their place comes an empire. But do not be deceived. This empire is no savior. It is no liberator. It is a beast, hungry and blind, eager to devour anything it does not control. His words clung to the air like a rot that would not lift. The syndicate leaders shifted uncomfortably, their thoughts racing. The Republic had always turned a blind eye to their shenanigans. This new regime, however, would not. The Empire would burn everything. The Jedi and syndicates alike. One of the Pikes finally broke the silence, voice trembling. What is to become of us then? Maul's eyes narrowed. He stepped forward. We adapt, we dominate, and we survive. A power vacuum has split the galaxy wide open, and we shall be the plague that fills it. No longer will we crawl in the shadows. Now we rise. Now we conquer. He turned and strode from the room, his steps echoing like a war drum. Behind him, the Crimson Dawn began to stir, awakened once more, spreading like a disease in the cracks of a broken galaxy. Soon, they would begin their next phase, his plan for vengeance, against the one who had taken everything from him, Sidious. The name burned in his chest like acid. The master who used him, discarded him, left him for dead. But even Sidious, as powerful as he was, had not been the architect for all of Maul's torment. There was one more. Kenobi. The thought of the Jedi's name sent waves of fury through his veins. If he had still lived throughout the Purge, Maul would find him. He must find him. He sat in silence, his mind drifting to the moment before the galaxy died, the day of the Purge. He had only just uncovered the identity of Lady Tano, Ahsoka, when her men turned against her, not by command, but by something else. Something monstrous, forced to fight his way out through a storm of betrayal. The air had been thick with smoke and blaster fire. Maul remembered Tano's anguished cry, her horror, her grief. He had felt nothing, no remorse. It was only survival. But it had come at a cost. His face had been torn apart, shredded by clone fire. His flesh melted, twisted, fused with cruel machinery just to keep him alive. He was now more machine than man, and yet, even then, it was his hatred, his pure, undying rage that pulled him from death's embrace, as it had been on Naboo, as it would always be. Vengeance was coming. He would wait, he would endure, because the endgame was near, and when it came, Maul would not be a pawn. Palpatine growled, his twisted features contorting into a fury few had ever witnessed. Something stirred in the darkness, a presence he had long believed extinguished. It lingered like a scent of decay in a sealed tomb. He had hoped it was gone, buried with the ashes of a forgotten war. But no, Maul lived, more resilient than Sidious had expected, a stubborn ember that refused to die out. Still, the creature's pitiful army, if one could even call it that, was little more than a rabble of mercenaries, scavengers, and bandits. Flies to be swatted at, thugs to be crushed beneath the heel of his glorious empire. As he descended the steps of the ancient prison carved into the bones of a long-dead world, the darkness thickened. The walls were soaked in centuries of death, etched with the silent screams of those who had suffered within. The Force screamed here now, warped and twisted beyond recognition. This was once a sacred Jedi site, their holy temple on Coruscant. Now it pulsed with the dark side, stronger than ever before, a cathedral of agony. Sidious moved deeper, his black cloak trailing like a liquid shadow. Down a damp, narrow hall, he approached a rusted cell, the final resting place of Count Dooku, a once mighty Sith Lord, now a wasted husk. The figure inside barely resembled the man he had once been. Sunken eyes, torn robes, a mind shattered beyond repair. Dooku didn't dare lift his head. There was no more tears to give, no pride left in him to cling on to. Sidious had stripped it all away. The corpse on the floor beside him, another lost Jedi, barely recognizable, was the former Grand Master of the Jedi Order, Yoda, and he too served as a reminder. Hope had no place here. Dooku's thoughts had long since turned inward. He dreamt of death. He longed for it, craved it, but death, it seemed, had abandoned him. He had made a grave mistake, exposing his master to Skywalker. That single act had changed the course of the galaxy. The price had been astronomical, not just for himself, but for the rest of the galaxy. But before he could further reflect, pain erupted through his body. Sidious unleashed his fury, crackling Sith lightning pouring from his fingertips. It wasn't meant to kill. That would have been a mercy. And mercy was dead. Dooku screamed. That was all he could do. His hands were gone, his power useless. The cell was a torture chamber by design, crafted to subdue even the strongest of Force wielders. When the lightning finally stopped, he collapsed in a heap of smoke and agony, gasping for breath like a drowning man. Sidious leaned in, voice like broken glass. "I sense deep pain and sorrow within you, my friend. You seek mercy?" He sneered. "Mercy is not the way of the Sith. Mercy is a weakness. Mercy is for the dead. There is no mercy." He turned away with a casual grace, as if disgusted by the idea of pity. "You could have been my greatest ally, Count," he said, voice like a dagger in the heart. His words struck harder than lightning ever had. "We could have ruled together, but instead you sought to defy me. You sought to create your own destiny, and now you rot." Dooku, barely conscious, raised his head and croaked. "What is my fate then? If not death, what use am I?" Sidious' lips curled into a monstrous smile, not one born of humor, but of absolute malice. "Use? You have none. You are the cause of all of this. Your failure birthed a new era. I keep you alive simply because it pleases me. That, and I find your company comforting." Then his tone grew colder. "But since you do ask, I have plans for your lingering Force essence." Dooku barely had time to contemplate what this meant before Sidious placed a hand upon his skull. Pain instantly exploded. white hot and all-consuming. This was not torture. This was something far greater. This was an extraction. The Sith Lord tore into his skull, siphoning the Force from within him like a venom. Dooku's screams were voiceless. The Force itself screamed within him. And when Sidious finally withdrew his hand, he shuddered in pleasure. The stolen energy swirled around him like a spectral storm. "Perfect," he whispered. As Sidious turned to leave, Dooku slumped to the floor. Changed. Something was gone. Something vital. The Force. The very current of its essence had been ripped from him. Sidious relished in it. Turning the corner, the Sith Lord entered another cell. There, chained to the wall like a broken marionette, hung Jedi Master Mace Windu. His arms stretched, his bones creaking, his gaze still defiant, however. "You'll never break me," Windu spat, his blooded lips sneering. "You're already dead, you just don't know it yet." Sidious ignored him. He stepped to a rotting corpse across the room and placed a hand upon its chest. The shadows stirred, the air thickened, Mace's breath caught in his throat. Something was wrong. The corpse moved. Sidious stepped back. Victorious, at long last, he had finally unlocked the secrets to essence transfer. Crude, imperfect, yes, but it was a beginning. And he had time. Turning to Mace, he gripped the Jedi's chin and leaned in close. "The dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities. Some would consider to be unnatural." Mace's eyes widened. There was no bluffing this. "Don't worry," Sidious whispered. "You still have purpose too. You're just proving harder to break. But the time is mine, and eventually you will crack." Sidious laughed, and at long last, the revenge of the Sith had truly begun. Anakin stood at the edge of a balcony atop a new Jedi temple. His eyes scanned the horizon beyond the mountain cliffs. The air was still, but the weight of the galaxy pressed heavy on his shoulders. It had only been a few months since the fall. The Republic shattered and the Jedi all but extinct. What remained was now little more than a whisper of the old ways, hidden in the shadows. But even then, whispers can still become storms. Together with Master Quinlan Vos and the young Wookiee Jedi Gungi, Anakin had already begun to build something. Fragile, secret, but dangerous. A new order. A order that would one day rise from the ashes and reclaim what had once been lost. He watched Quinlan sparring with Gungi, laughter echoing across the courtyard like a breath of fresh air. For a moment, Anakin allowed himself to smile. This was the beginning. Then a shrill, pulsing tone of his emergency comm shattered the quiet. He spun around, his cloak billowing behind him. He rushed inside to answer. Upon activating the hologram, Padme's face appeared on the screen, ghostly pale and panicked. Her eyes darted as though she was expecting death to strike behind her at any second. "Padme, what happened?" Anakin asked, already fearing the answer. Her voice trembled. "They know. The Empire knows I've been helping you." Anakin's heart dropped like a stone. "How? How could they have—" "I don't know. Someone must have talked. I need an immediate evacuation." Anakin staggered backwards, barely able to process her words. The walls seemed to close in around him. "Where are you?" "My Guido," she responded. "The locals helped me get out of Coruscant, but the Empire retaliated. They sent millions of droids to wipe them out. Entire cities have turned to glass. The people want to rebel, but they can't. They are outnumbered 1,000,000 to 1. He clenched his jaw, bringing a hand to his chin, calculating what his next move was. "We're coming then. Me and Quinlan will get you and the kids." Just saying "the kids" made his breath catch. A chill crept up his spine. If the Empire had touched them, if they had done anything to his kids remotely, he wouldn't know what he would do. He ended the transmission, storming back onto the training grounds, and approached Voss. His expression said everything. Quinlan raised a brow, then chuckled. "Well, that's convenient. I was heading to my Guido anyway. Someone important needs extracting." Anakin gave a half smile. "We could always use more allies." Sidious descended the spiral steps down the ancient prison chamber, the air growing colder with each step. The shadows twisted unnaturally here, clinging to walls like old bloodstains. Something had shifted in the currents of the Force. He could feel it, a disturbance, sharp and personal. It was her, Padme Amidala. He had allowed her to play her little games for far too long. pretending to aid the scattered Jedi in secret. It was a perfect trap, and she had never realized it, that she was his instrument all along. A beacon drawing the hunted into the Empire's jaw. Her time was coming to an end, and so was the last flicker of rebellion. Sidious laughed, a sound that didn't echo but clung to the walls. He saw it. The moment it happened, the last remains of Windu's hope snapped like a brittle bone, a soul crushed under the unbearable weight. Sidious had waited patiently for this moment, feeding Windu's despair like a poison, letting it rot his will from the inside out. Now the core was hollow. The Jedi was gone. With a second hand, he pressed harder against Windu's skull, released a torrent of dark-side energy. Pure hatred, malice, and vengeance. It surged into Windu's body like molten iron, flooding every nerve, every memory. His body arced violently. His mouth opened in a silent scream as his spirit was dragged into a pit of eternal darkness. His eyes rolled back, his skin paled, and for a moment, silence. Then the head slumped forward. Sidious leaned in, a serpent savoring the final breath of its prey. But slowly, Windu's head began to rise. Something dark stirred behind those eyes, and when they opened, they were no longer the eyes of Mace Windu. They were bright and burning yellow. Master Windu was dead. In his place stood something twisted, hollow, and bound to the will of the Sith. "Rise," Sidious whispered, venom dripping from every syllable. "The Empire needs its new enforcer." Windu rose, not by choice. Maul paced the cold floors of his starship. He breathed slow, eyes locked on the torn world of Megiddo. As it drew closer through his viewport, the planet loomed beneath him like a dying beast. Something was calling him there. A presence? As his ship broke through the rolling clouds, he saw it. Devastation beyond reckoning. Megiddo had been gutted, entire districts reduced to smoldering husks. Buildings split open, the air was thick with ash, corpses lay in the street like discarded dolls, limbs twisted, mouths frozen mid-scream. Maul stepped off the landing pad into the graveyard. The dark side swelled around him like a rising tide. The planet itself seemed angry, betrayed. It had become a boiling cauldron of suffering. The central government had long collapsed. Only splintered militias remained now, small and desperate, but they hated the Empire. From the east, Maul saw the mechanical glint of thousands of Imperial battle droids marching in formation, their cold precision slicing through the chaos. Their synchronized steps shook the ground. His hand went instinctively to his lightsaber hilt, his breath sharpening. These weren't clones. Clones would hesitate, would doubt. Droids only knew command, only death. Then, without warning, a civilian broke through an alleyway, hurling a crude explosive device into the droid army. The blast detonated like a scream, sending shards of metal and smoke into the sky. And that scream was the signal. The silence was shattered. The streets erupted in a chaos of blaster fire, screams from windows, from rooftops, and from hidden bunkers. Smoke poured into the skies of Megiddo. The skies turned red, alive with screams and heat. Maul didn't flinch. This wasn't his place. Anakin looked down from the ship and saw the city torn into a nightmare. It was utter hell. The cities of Megiddo burned beneath him, reduced to a graveyard of ash and blood. Civilians ran in all directions, their screams lost beneath the mechanical roar of blaster fire and the stomping march of 1,000 Imperial battle droids. He clenched his fists and whispered coldly, "This is it. No more delays." With a flick of his wrist, his lightsaber ignited in a flash of furious blue. As he dove from the ship like a meteor, he hit the ground running, cutting through droids with vicious precision. Limbs through, heads rolled. Sparks erupted with every strike as his saber carved molten arcs through metal. His path towards Padme was soaked in violence. His boots splashed through puddles of blood. Civilians and machines alike. He wanted to stop, to help those screaming for mercy, but he couldn't. Not now. Padme was all that mattered. Elsewhere, Quinlan Voss landed the ship and immediately locked eyes with a familiar figure in the chaos. Wielding a yellow lightsaber, Asajj Ventress stood atop the wreckage, commanding a pocket of resistance. Voss's lips curled into a smile as he rushed to be by her side, their sabers whirling in harmony. They tore through the droids, blades a blur, cutting through countless droids. Meanwhile, Anakin reached an abandoned building, kicking the door down, and was met with a sharp pain. A chair cracked against his skull. He staggered back, ready to strike, but froze when he saw who held the chair. It was Padme. She was trembling. Her eyes were wide as she dropped the weapon with a gasp. They embraced, bodies shaking with emotion as quiet sobs escaped them both. For a brief moment, tenderness was stolen from the carnage. Then Anakin turned, and for the first time, his eyes fell upon his children, Leia and little Jin. A warmth pierced through the storm of his soul, but it didn't last. The building shook violently from a nearby explosion. "We have to move, now," leading Padme and the kids out. He was shocked to see Quinlan and Ventress. His jaw tightened. He thought she died a long time ago, but there was no time for questions. As they sprinted to the extraction point, 4 lightsabers ignited ahead. A gurgle laugh echoed throughout the burning streets. "Leaving so soon, Jedi?" General Grievous stepped from the smoke.
"Lord Sidious will be most pleased with your death. Well, except you, Skywalker. He still has plans for you."
Anakin didn't hesitate. His saber hissed to life again, ready to tear this cybernetic monster apart. But before he could strike, Grievous was hurled backwards by a blast of pure rage. Out of the shadows, Maul walked out. As he charged Grievous, his red blade screamed as it clashed against Grievous's defense. The duel erupted in a blur of violence. Everyone froze. Padme, Quinlan, Ventress, even Anakin stared in disbelief. What the hell was Maul doing here? Then it hit him. Ahsoka. She had been sent to capture Maul, but if he was here, and she wasn't, a storm of dread churned in Anakin's gut. He didn't even have time to process it before blaster fire raged behind him again. The droids had found them. Snarling, Anakin, Quinlan, and Ventress leapt into action. They carved through the enemy ranks with savage efficiency, giving Padme and the children cover to board the ship. As the ramp closed in behind them, the battle still raged on below. In the skies, 3 massive Imperial cruisers ripped through hyperspace above, casting shadows over the ruined city. From their hangar bay, thousands of droid starfighters screamed down into the chaos. Anakin took the controls, trying to weave through the onslaught. His mind was fractured by the rage, fear, and adrenaline. Just as he was about to set course to Kashyyyk, an emergency transmission flickered to life. Accepting it, Maul's holocron appeared, bloodied but calm. "I'm afraid the pleasantries must wait. It appears we share a common enemy now, the Empire. Meet me on Mustafar. I shall explain more there." Coordinates streamed across the console before the feed cut out. Anakin stared, seething. Well, that doesn't sound too promising," Quinlan said. "I think it's a trap," Ventress added coldly. Anakin raised an eyebrow. The irony wasn't lost on him. Coming from a former Sith assassin, he turned to Padme. She blinked in confusion. "If he thinks he can help, I'd say go for it." Anakin sighed, punched in the coordinates, and said quietly, "Maul better have a damn good reason, or I'll finish what Kenobi couldn't." The ship jumped into hyperspace, towards Mustafar, towards Maul. The doors of the ship hissed open, steam curling from the landing pad struts as Maul stepped out into the flickering gloom of the Crimson Dawn headquarters. He held a grisly trophy, the severed hand of General Grievous, wires still twitching. Grievous had escaped him, barely, but Maul had made his point. He was not to be trifled with. The fortress before him was alive within moments. Hundreds of soldiers, mercenaries, bounty hunters, and ex-Imperials moved with military precision. He had been briefed during the flight in. Crimson Dawn's reach was now extended deep within the Mid-Rim and far across the Outer Rim territories. Gangs, rebel cells, and former Republic holdouts all fell under his shadow. But just as he turned to retreat into the fortress, a chill ran down his spine. A familiar sound sliced through the air, a ship's whine, a Jedi ship. He stepped forward, his gaze fixed on the descending vessel. The hatch opened. Anakin Skywalker stepped out. Flanked by him was his friends, Quinlan and Ventress, and then some other unknown woman. Their lightsabers ignited in unison, humming with warning. Maul sneered and strode towards with false calm. "There will be no need for that here," he said. "We are allies now." Anakin didn't even respond. His eyes, burning with fury, locked onto Maul. With a flick of his fingers, Maul was lifted from the ground and slammed mid-air by an invisible grip. He gasped as the force tightened around his throat. "What did you do with Ahsoka?" Anakin roared. "Where is she?" Maul gasped for breath, his mechanical legs kicking as he looked around. His guards raised their weapons, but he choked out a command through the pressure. No, hold your fire. Then he looked to Skywalker. You don't understand, Skywalker, he wheezed. If I killed your Padawan, why would I bring you here? There'd be no alliance, only bloodshed. Anakin's grip tightened. She lives, Maul barked. Or if not, I swear by every Sith code I was not the one to kill her. When the purge began, your clones turned on all of us. We were separated. Anakin held the pressure for a little bit longer. Then he slowly let Maul drop. The Zabrak hit the ground hard, wheezing and coughing. After a moment, he looked up, eyes gleaming with restrained malice. I didn't bring you here to argue over any corpses and regrets. I brought you here because we both have a common enemy. Anakin's jaw tightened. Common enemy? You mean the one you served? The one you helped rise to power by murdering Master Qui-Gon? You're lucky I didn't kill you right now. Maul chuckled bitterly and wiped blood from his lips. If you killed me, you'll make me a martyr to my people. And as for Master Jin, he stood, brushed himself off. I regret the manner of his death, not the act. A Jedi of his stature deserved a warrior's end, not a swift one. Anakin's hands clenched into a fist, his saber humming louder. Relax, Maul said, his voice low and dangerous. As I have told you, we are not enemies. Not yet, anyway. When this is over, when the Empire is in ashes, we can settle this old debt. But now, we need each other. Anakin scoffed. And why would the Jedi ever help you? So you can topple the Empire and crown yourself in its place? We're not trading one tyrant for another. Maul's tone sharpened. No, you misunderstand me. I do not wish to rule. I wish to destroy what was built on my suffering. On yours. You think you have allies? You think the Jedi can win this war alone? He gestured to the skies. The Empire is boundless. Trillions of soldiers, machines without fear. Sidious has turned the galaxy into his playground. Without us, without me, you're already dead. Anakin growled, his anger shimmering just below the surface. We don't need you. Maul's face twisted in irritation. Keep lying to yourself, Skywalker, but ask yourself this. If not for your vengeance against Sidious, then what? What of the Jedi who remain? What of your Padawan? Would she not choose survival over pride? That struck a nerve. Anakin turned silently, glancing towards Quinlan and the others. They exchanged uncertain looks, shrugs, and nods of cautious agreement. Anakin exhaled through his nose. Fine, we'll work with you, but don't mistake this for trust. The second this war is over, I will be the one to kill you. Maul smirked. As I would expect. At that, the Crimson Dawn soldiers lowered their weapons, and the tension slowly began to bleed out. Maul raised a hand, gesturing for silence as his forces stepped back. The uneasy alliance had begun, but their hatred in both of their eyes set one thing very clear. This truce was only temporary, and when the Empire fell away, only one of them would walk away. The mist rolled thick across the canopy as the Jedi shuttle descended once more into Kashyyyk. A strange silence had greeted them. Not the peace of safety, but the quiet tension of a world holding its breath. Anakin took Padme and Ventress to their hidden dwellings nestled within the dense forest, far from the eyes of the droids and traitors. It was the first moment in stillness they'd had in months. But even here, among the trees and shadows, the war crept at its edges. Later, in the dimly lit comm chambers, crackling half-functional transmitters and the low hum of ancient technology, Anakin leaned over his console, his face partially lit in the blue light. As much as I hate to admit it, he said quietly, Maul's right. We don't have nearly enough allies. If this war is going to be anything more than a doomed last stand, we need to give the people a reason to believe again. Padme's eyes flickered with exhaustion. I've tried everything while I was on Coruscant, she said, her voice heavy with grief. The people are willing to fight, but fear chains them in their place. They don't need more soldiers, Anakin. They need hope. Those words sunk into Anakin like a dagger. He understood her, but it didn't make the burden any lighter. In the days that followed, a council was formed within the depths of the Kashyyyk stronghold. Anakin, Ventress, Quinlan Vos. They stood in the war room, maps of the galaxy projected in flickering red. Their decision was anonymous. For the next 2 years, they would become the Spark, the unseen hand of the rebellion. Each of them would go into the galaxy one by one, striking key droid facilities, sabotaging military outposts, appearing like ghosts in the night. It wouldn't break the Empire's spine, but it would ignite something far more dangerous than war: faith. And so they began. In the dark corners of the Outer Rim, explosions lit the night. Droid foundries were torn apart with thermal detonators and coded viruses. Hope lives, civilians whispered legends, but it was no easy alliance. Maul's Crimson Dawn supported the operations, offering stolen technologies, hidden channels, corrupted Imperial codes. But trust never came with a deal. Crimson Dawn operatives watched the Jedi with narrowed eyes. The Jedi returned the favor. Violence between the allies were avoided, barely. Then came Tython. Anakin chased down the rumors of ancient Jedi knowledge. The temples were empty, but the air was still alive with something deeper, like the Force itself breathed through the planet. Then he saw her, Ahsoka Tano, older now and hardened, but her lightsaber still shimmed with that blue light. Beside her stood Ki-Adi-Mundi, his presence commanding despite the passage of the years, and his head was as massive as ever. "The Force brought us here," Ahsoka said, her voice almost disbelieving. "It pulled us." Anakin stepped forward, and for the first time in years, his anger gave way to something else: relief. He brought them back to Kashyyyk. The Jedi Order, small as it was, had grown, 37 strong over the years. Masters like Seer Junda and Ram Koda trained the Padawans in both blade and sabotage. Padawans and younglings such as Cal Kestis, Caleb Dune, and Masana Tide all forged in flame. And thanks to Anakin and Quinlan's teaching, they became a guerrilla force. Mundi had brought more than wisdom. Hidden caches of holocrons, secrets buried since the Clone Wars. The Order, once broken, had finally taken its roots again. And then came the decision. The time had come to act. Anakin reached out to Maul. Their plan was madness, and it was perfect. The droid foundries all across the Mid and Outer Rim would be hit in unison, primarily though on Geonosis, by Jedi and Syndicate forces alike. The Crimson Dawn would sow sabotage, assassinate foremans, and collapse trade routes. Meanwhile, the citizens would rise, all at once, ignited by chaos and coordinate unrest. And then the final blow. Anakin, Maul, Ahsoka, Ventress, Quinlan, and Ki-Adi-Mundi would infiltrate the Imperial heart, kill both Grievous and the Emperor in one fell strike. Maul listened silently, then he nodded once. "This might work." His voice was low, unreadable. "Where?" he asked. "Where shall this revolt begin?" Maul opened his mouth to speak, but the words never came. The air cracked with thunder that did not belong to any storm. Dozens of massive Imperial starcruisers tore out of hyperspace like a monster breaching reality, casting shadows over the Kashyyyk's ancient forests. The sky was bolted out in seconds, engines, alarms, and defying roars of atmospheric entry. As droid ships broke through the clouds, hundreds of thousands of droids, newer models, sleeker and deadlier, poured down from orbit like a mechanical plague. Anakin bolted to the comm chamber, the door barely opening before he leapt through it and sprinted to the edge of the command platform. His heart stopped. Leading in the front line, unmistakable and towering, was General Grievous, his blades already ignited. Anakin screamed no, his voice raw with fury. He vaulted over the rails and dove headfirst into the chaos below, lightsaber igniting mid-fall. He crashed into a squad of droids, sending shattered Durasteel and spark flying in every direction. He fought like a storm unleashed, each swing of his saber carving through lines of metal soldiers, but they kept on coming. He was surrounded now. Choking smoke rose from burning trees. Wookiee warriors howled as they fought and fell. Explosions tore through the canopy, sending limbs and debris raining from above. All Anakin could do was watch, trapped, as Grievous marched towards the younglings, his mechanical legs crushing foliage and corpses alike. Caleb Dune and Gungi stood before the terrified children. They raised their sabers, brave and defiant, but it was ultimately hopeless. Grievous struck down like a demon, his clawed hands lashing out and crushed Gungi's throat in an instant with a sickening crunch, silencing the Wookiee's cry forever. Caleb swung at Grievous's side but was too slow. Grievous cleaved him in half with a single fluid motion. Blood sprayed against the trees. Grievous halted. The stench of fear drew his attention like a predator scenting blood. Slowly, he turned his head. The whirling of cybernetics pierced the silence as his glowing eyes narrowed. There, hidden beneath the tangle of overgrown brush, lay Padawan Katumi, curled into a trembling ball, trying to make herself disappear. Her robes were torn, her tiny hands clamped over her mouth, but her muffled sobs still escaped. A low, mechanical chuckle rumbled through Grievous's chest, more beast than man.
Little Jedi, trying to hide.
He moved forward, each step splintering the undergrowth beneath his clawed feet. With a single sweep from his cybernetic arm, he tore away the undergrowth that shielded her. Katumi screamed as daylight and horror spilled over her. She tried to crawl back, bloodied knees scraping against roots and debris. She begged for Grievous not to kill her. Her eyes widened with primal horror. Grievous stared, silent for a heartbeat, as if considering her plea. Then, without a word, he lashed out, her claw gripping her leg as he yanked her into the air. The sickening snap of bone echoed like a gunshot through the forest. Her screams were cut short as she was swung like a rag doll. Her body was hurled through the air as she smashed into the side of a collapsed Wookiee hut. Her body folded unnaturally with a wet crunch. Debris scattered and blood painted the dirt below. Before she could even whimper, Grievous was on her again. He raised his durasteel leg and slammed it down on her chest, crushing it inwards. She tried to scream, but only a rasp escaped. Grievous leaned down, one claw pulling his saber from his belt.
You were never warriors, just prey.
With a violent hiss, the blade ignited, and with precision, he drove it through her skull. The blue plasma searing bone and brain in an instant. The light in her eye faded to nothing. Smoke rose from the wound. The metallic stench of burned flesh remained. Then, his attention turned to the next scream that echoed throughout the jungle. The hunt wasn't over yet. The scream that followed the echoes across the entire planet. No! Anakin roared, breaking through the droid lines, but it was too late. From the trees above, Quinlan Vos landed like a meteor. His power exploded outwards like a shockwave that hurled Grievous back. He fell to his knees beside Gunji's still form, scooping the youngling in his arms. His face twisted in pain, eyes wide, tears streaking down his dirt-covered cheek.
I'll kill you, Grievous whispered.
Then louder,
I'll kill you! You'll pay, you son of a...
A sudden explosion ripped through the battlefield, silencing him. The shockwave lit the skies with fire. Bodies flew in all directions. Grievous rose from the flames, cloak torn and burning. He laughed, a hollowed metallic screech that sent chills through every Jedi's spine.
They were only the first,
he hissed. Then he leaped into the fray, spinning sabers tearing through the Jedi ranks. Quinlan Vos gave chase, screaming in rage as the Force descended into madness. Ahsoka and Ki-Adi-Mundi fought back to back, blades flashing, limbs falling, and droids collapsing into pieces. The Wookiees surged forward in waves, roaring with primal fury, driving the mechanical horde back just long enough to reach the emergency ships. Anakin, shaking and bloodied, followed them, his mind barely able to process what he had just witnessed. In the command center, he sent a desperate transmission. Maul, we're under siege. We need help now. The hologram of Maul flickered in, red and distorted. I'll send what I... The image exploded in static. Another Imperial assault had hit the Crimson Dawn base. Anakin slammed his fist on the console, splitting it. How? How did they find us? But there was no time. He triggered the full evacuation order and rushed back into the smoke to drag the wounded, Jedi, Wookiee, even civilians, to the shuttles. By nightfall, half of the population of Kashyyyk was either dead or missing, and Maul's forces had been gutted in the same manner. They regrouped in a ruined bunker far on the outer rim of the galaxy. Burned, exhausted, and reeling, the air was thick with despair. Anakin stood over them, chest heavy, his face streaked with soot and blood. I know what you're all thinking, that we've already lost, that there's no point in fighting anymore. But if we give up now, everyone that we've lost, everyone that have died, would have been for nothing. He paused, scanning the crowd. We fight. Even if it's just for a sunrise we'll never see. Even if it ends with every last one of us in the ground. Because if we don't, The galaxy will belong to the monster forever. Before he could continue, Padme burst in the room, a holopad in her hand. You all need to see this. She played a message. It was raw footage. Civilians were rioting, chanting, storming Imperial outpost, burning banners, crashing starfighters. Rebellion was everywhere. Padme looked up, her eyes filled with stunned hope. There's talk of a galaxy-wide uprising. Rumors have spread what happened on Kashyyyk, and they've had enough. Anakin blinked. But how? She smiled. Because every time we hit back, every factory destroyed, every base we take, they watch. And now they're ready to die for freedom. Anakin turned to the Jedi and to Maul's lieutenants, and to the remaining warriors and survivors. Then I guess it's settled. The attack is still on. Tomorrow, they would bring hell to the Empire. The Jedi carved through droid foundries like wrathful gods, and their final transport descended through the smoky clouds of Coruscant. Anakin stood at the ramp, his saber in hand. The city below him was quiet. Too quiet. Why are there no defenses? Ahsoka asked. Her eyes narrowed. Anakin didn't answer. They stepped out, and before them stood their final destination, the ruins of the Jedi Temple. Broken, dark, and discarded. It was waiting for them. Anakin ascended the ruined steps of the Jedi Temple, each footfall heavy with rage and dread. Behind him, the strike force of the Jedi and Maul with Ventress followed in tense silence, their faces grim beneath the ruined sky. Smoke curled from the shattered spires of the once sacred sanctuary, now nothing more than a tomb. At the summit, they found him, Darth Sidious. He sat atop a grotesque throne forged from the bones of slaughtered Jedi, their skeletons twisted together in crude shapes, arms stretched out in agony, skulls frozen in silent screams. The Emperor's eyes glowed like twin suns of malice. To his right stood General Grievous, his mechanical form twitching with bloodlust, and shackled to a nearby pillar was Count Dooku, bruised, broken, and discarded. But that wasn't what scarred Anakin. Looking over, Anakin's breath caught in his throat as his eyes swept to the base of the throne. There, like specters of a nightmare, stood two figures long thought lost. Mace Windu. He was alive, or something like it. His body bore the brutal scars of war and betrayal, his face twisted with pain and power. His once regal brown robes had been replaced with jet black armor, and clutched in his hand was his unmistakable violet blade. His single remaining eye, once filled with wisdom, now burned yellow with corruption. He grinned, and then the final blow. From the shadows stepped out Obi-Wan Kenobi. His robes were tattered, his presence wrong. It was all wrong. He opened his eyes, yellow. A crooked smile curled across his lips. "Hello there, Anakin." Anakin staggered backwards, his lightsaber nearly slipping from his hand. His world cracked open. "No," he whispered. This isn't real." He turned to Sidious, voice trembling with fury. "What the hell have you done?" The Emperor stood, his laughter thick and inhumane. "Oh, my dear boy," he said, each word slicing through the air. "I've done nothing. I've simply made use of the broken tools left behind. Your precious Kenobi has become a spectacular Grand Inquisitor. And Master Windu, well, he's rather adapted quite well to his new station. Wouldn't you agree?" He threw his head back and laughed. Quinlan Vos cursed and ignited his saber. Ki-Adi-Mundi stood in shock, and Maul and Ventress exchanged glances, uneasy yet intrigued. And Ahsoka staggered backwards, her soul trembling. She couldn't speak. But Anakin moved. His fury surged like a wildfire. The Force erupted around him in a blinding storm as he instinctively tapped into something ancient and something dangerous. Battle meditation. He felt the threads of the Force knot together around him, tethering the minds of his allies, amplifying their strength and their resolve. "Attack!" he roared. The strike force surged forwards, sabers igniting in a choir of righteous fury. Sidious simply got up and stepped away from his throne as he walked into the crumbling temple's depths, cloak trailing behind him like a shadow. He didn't run. He had no need to. He wanted to be followed. Anakin didn't hesitate. He plunged into the darkness, following the Sith Lord. The instant he crossed the threshold, the entrance collapsed behind him in a blast of pulverized stone. Windu had crushed it behind them, sealing them inside. Now, standing in the path of the others, Windu and Grievous advanced. Two monsters reborn. With a guttural roar, Windu launched towards Ahsoka and Ki-Adi-Mundi, saber spinning in deadly arcs. Grievous lunged at Quinlan and Ventress, blades shrieking through the air. As chaos exploded around them, Maul stepped back, motionless. His gaze wasn't on the battle. It was fixed on one man, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Stepping through the carnage, calm and focused. "At last," he muttered, "we meet again." Maul's lips curled. "Kenobi," he spat. "I wouldn't waste the end of our rivalry in this graveyard." Kenobi ignited his saber and lunged, but Maul anticipated the strike, ducking low and spinning, blasting Kenobi away with a force push. He flipped onto a toppled pillar and sneered. "You want revenge? Then meet me where it matters most," he growled, leaping into the shuttle he arrived in. As the engines ignited, he locked eyes with Kenobi one final time. "Mustafar shall be your tomb." With a roar of flame, the ship vanished into hyperspace. Kenobi smirked. "Mustafar it shall be." Grievous laughed as he walked over to Quinlan and Ventress. "This will be fun," he mocked. Separating his forearms, he ignited his sabers one at a time, laughing as he slowly paced around them. Quinlan and Ventress simultaneously turned on their sabers, their green and yellow glow cascading across the ruins. Quinlan let out a roar of courage as he charged the general. Their sabers clashed as they fought. Grievous flipped over debris as he deflected their strikes, quickly turning to back off Ventress, who started her own fury of strikes. This will be fun indeed. Somewhere in the depths of the temple, Anakin descended into the abyss, all alone. The end had begun. Anakin tore through the blackened halls of the Jedi Temple, each breath choking with the stench of rot and smoldering flesh. The walls were coated with soot and blood. His boots splashed through puddles of blood that refused to dry. And all around him, the warped shadows of fallen Jedi twisted across the stone. Their bodies were gone, burned, shattered, but their pain clung to the air like a curse. He pushed forward, fighting the bile rising in his throat. He had to find Sidious. He had to end this nightmare. But the deeper he ran, the more the temple changed. The screaming started low, faint wails at first, like ghosts whispering in the dark. But they grew louder, angrier, and desperate. It was as if the walls themselves had absorbed the final cries of the Jedi slaughtered there. The souls of the damned screeched for justice. Anakin stumbled to a halt in front of what he assumed had once been a chamber door, now blasted apart, jagged and blackened. As he stepped through the threshold, the screaming ceased instantly. It was as if the very room had swallowed sound itself. Silent and heavy, Anakin looked around, but he only saw shadows. Then something grazed the back of his head. He froze. Slowly, he turned and looked up, and the galaxy stopped. His breath caught in his throat as he dropped to his knees. This was insane. This was desecration of the dead, and this was madness made manifest. Above him, stretching into the shadows of the ceiling, hundreds of corpses dangled on rusted wires and torn cables. Jedi Knights, Masters, and Younglings. Their bodies hung like butchered animals, skin bloated, eyes wide and empty, mouths still frozen mid-scream. Their robes were scorched, limbs twisted, some still clutched lightsabers. Others had nothing left but stumps. Anakin tried to move, tried to crawl away, but the room itself felt alive with grief and hatred. He turned to escape, but the doorway was gone, only darkness. He spun back, and there, kneeling in the center of the horror, was a figure cloaked in shadow. Anakin stepped closer, heart pounding like a war drum. The dim light revealed the weathered face beneath the hood. "Master Plo Koon?" Anakin breathed. You survived. What are you doing here?" For a moment, a flicker of hope pierced the gloom. But Plo Koon didn't move. He didn't look up. and finally he spoke. His voice was cracked. His oxygen mask hung loosely as it was half shattered. His face was dark with burn marks, and one of his eyes was missing. "You shouldn't have come back, Anakin. We failed. We all failed." Before Anakin could speak, the darkness shifted. From behind Plo, the shadows peeled away like smoke, revealing the architect of the nightmare, Darth Sidious. His face was a grotesque smile carved into malice itself, eyes glowing with glee. "Ah, the once mighty knight and loved master, how touching," he purred. Anakin's hand shot to his saber, but he was too slow. With a flick of his wrist, Sidious ignited his lightsaber, and in one smooth, merciless motion, decapitated Plo Koon. The Keldor's head thudded at Anakin's feet, collapsing like a puppet with cut strings. Anakin screamed, but the Force seized him before the sound could escape. He was hurled into the air and slammed into the ceiling, crashing down into the heaps of corpses. Cold limbs wrapped around him as if welcoming him into their numbers. Sidious raised a hand, and wires slithered from the walls like serpents, tightening around his neck. They formed a noose. It pulled and tightened. Anakin kicked and thrashed, but he couldn't breathe. The galaxy dimmed around the edges. Sidious turned away, cloaks billowing like smoke. "Don't worry, Anakin," he said with a chilling calm. "I'll take good care of Padme and your children, Leia and little Jin it was. I have plans for them." Anakin reached out, fingers trembling, vision narrowing, but it was too late. His strength diminished. His screams died in his throat. The last thing he saw before the darkness swallowed him was the wicked smile of Sidious, bathed in the light of the dead. Blood seeped from his head as his eyes adjusted, just in time, as with a single jerk, he rolled aside as Grievous's sabers slammed into the floor where his skull had once been, scorching the stone and sending sparks flying like demonic fireflies. With a snarl, Quinlan yanked his saber into his grip through the Force and lashed out, hurling Grievous across the shattered chamber. The cyborg shrieked, a garbled mechanic howl, more beast than man. As he crashed through the debris, Ventress was already on him, her yellow blade whirling with savage, bloodthirsty precision. Quinlan saw his chance. He lunged, driving his saber clean through Grievous's armored chest from behind. The blade punctured through metal and synthetic flesh with a sickening crunch and hiss. Grievous let out a mangled, gargled scream, his taloned hands clawing uselessly at the smoking hole in his chest. Dark fluid poured from the wound, steaming on contact with the air. His optical sensors dimmed, flickering like a dying star. He turned his head, twitching and sputtering with the last of his breath through it. Quinlan stepped over the twitching corpse and spat on it. "I'll see you in hell." Then he turned, and the horror beneath him nearly stopped his heart. Across the ruined hall, Ahsoka and Ki-Adi-Mundi fought desperately against something that used to be Mace Windu. Whatever it was now wasn't human. A sickening dread twisted in Quinlan's gut. Something was wrong. Where was Anakin? He could feel it like a scream in the Force, raw and distant. "I have to go," he said, his voice grim. "Anakin's in trouble. I can feel it." Ventress scoffed, her lips curled. "And what exactly do you expect me to do?" Quinlan gave her a blood-slick grin. "The fight's not over, and from the looks of it, Ahsoka and Mundi might be needing all the help they can get." He didn't wait for an answer. He turned and sprinted down the crumbling stairway that still held an entrance point, down into the discarded Jedi Temple. Mace Windu came at them with the force of nature, a blur of shadow and violet fire. His lightsaber screamed through the air faster than thought, tearing into the defenses with monstrous fury. Mundi was already retreating, stumbling over shattered stone as he tried to maintain his balance. The old Syrian eyes were wide open with dread. He'd fought Sith, warlords, and nightmares before, but none had ever moved like this. None had ever fought like this. Ahsoka weaved between strikes, her saber clashing and sliding under his brutal assault. But it was like trying to stop a hurricane with leaves. It was impossible. Mace's power was overwhelming, unnatural, and with a snarl, he lunged through her defenses and caught her by the throat mid-dodge. Lifting her into the air, he hurled her like a ragdoll across the ruined temple. She struck Rebel with a sickening crunch and vanished beneath the cloud of dust and debris. Mundy's breath hitched as he turned to her, then froze as Windu's shadow loomed before him, the glow of his saber reflecting off eyes now devoid of mercy. A twisted grin carved across his face, madness flickering behind it like lightning in a storm. "Why the long head, Mundy?" Mace purred, voice slick with venom. "Aren't you happy to see me?" This isn't you, Mace. Please come back to us." Windu burst into cruel laughter, loud and jarring. The sound echoed off the broken stone like a chorus of the damned. Without warning, he extended a hand. The force slammed into Mundy's chest like a battering ram, lifting him from his feet. Before he hit the ground, Mace vaulted through the air and crashed down on him with a bone-shaking blow. His boots crushed Mundy's chest plate. The Syrian grunted, falling back, and then the pummeling began. Punch after punch, the knuckles of Mace's fist broke skin and split bone. Mundy's blood strained through the temple floors in thick droplets. Windu hurled him beside Ahsoka's collapsed form. Gasping and bruised, Mundy staggered to his knees. He locked eyes with Ahsoka, and what he saw in her face reflected his own horror. This was no longer a Jedi. "We must stop him," Mundy rasped, wiping blood from his brow. "We have to." Together they lunged, but Windu was already moving. With a vicious tug of the Force, he seized them mid-air, flinging them backward like broken dolls. He surged towards Ahsoka, sweeping under her blade, twisted and kicked her legs out from beneath her. Before she could fall, his boot snapped into her skull. She hit the ground hard, her saber scattering into the dust. Mundy's strikes came from behind, but Mace was ready. His saber spun back, clashing with Mundy in a blinding burst. Mundy tried to counter, to flip away, but Vapad was unrelenting and merciless, like a storm with no eye. Windu fed on fear. He craved it. "Oh, the great Searan master trembling at the feet of his old friend?" Windu snarled. "Pathetic." Chunks of debris tore through the ruins and hurled them towards Mundy. He threw out his hand, stopping them mid-air and whipping them back. But Mace only grinned, raising his own hand and reduced them to dust with a single pulse of dark power. Ahsoka returned with a scream, her blade carving across his back. Mace bellowed in pain and rage, spinning and grabbing her by the arm. He slammed her into the stone, and then blasted her with a force wave so strong it sent her flying hundreds of feet before she vanished into the distant ruin. Mundy roared and drove a punch into Mace's face, but it wasn't enough. Blood dripped from his nose. Windu grinned wider, and in a blink, he clamped his hands around Mundy's throat. "Enough games." He lifted the Jedi Master and slammed him into the ground with such force that the ground shook. His fists became hammers. Mundy's head snapped from side to side under each blow. Skin split and bone fractured. By the time it was over, Mundy was barely conscious, his breath a whisper, his life hanging by the thread. A scream tore the silence. Ahsoka dragging herself forward. Windu stopped and turned, eyes burning and grinning like a man possessed. Ahsoka faltered. Panic sealed her legs. She wanted to run, but there was nowhere left to go. Windu raised his fist once more, blood dripping. But as he brought it down for the last time, Mundy closed his eyes, accepting his fate. Then, a blur, a shockwave. Windu reeled back, caught off guard. Ventress. She landed beside Ahsoka and yanked her to her feet, igniting her yellow saber. "That's not Windu anymore," she growled. Sidious broke him, twisted his mind into something else. Ahsoka staggered, disoriented. What do we do then? But even as she asked it, she could feel something, like a whisper in the Force. A light, distant but not gone. A memory, a power, a gift. She realized what she needed to do. I can heal him, she breathed. Ventress blinked. Heal him? You saw what he just did. Ahsoka cut her off. There's still light, Ahsoka said, her voice resolute. I can feel it. Ventress tightened her jaw, then nodded. Fine, you get your shot. I'll hold him off. Ventress darted first, blades flashing, fury incarnate. Windu met her in kind, the ground shaking beneath every blow. Ahsoka circled wide, waiting, and then she struck. Her blade bit deep, and Mace screamed, collapsing to his knees. But before he could rise, Ventress roared, pouring all of her power into the Force. pinning him to the ground. "It's now or never, kid," she shouted through gritted teeth. Ahsoka rushed in, dropped beside him, and placed her trembling hand on his forehead. Mace snarled, eyes bloodshot, spitting curses and hatred, but he couldn't move. Not while Ventress held him down. Ahsoka closed her eyes, reaching inside his mind. There was only darkness, though, oceans of it, screaming, writhing, and endless. Yet, buried deep, deep within his mind, flickering like a candle in a storm, was a light. Faint and fragile. Ahsoka reached for it, called on the energy of the daughter, and the light given to her so long ago. The Force surged through her, not as a weapon, but as a healing, as hope. Mace convulsed as the temple rumbled. Then, silence. As Mace opened his eyes for the first time, Kenobi walked down the ramp of the Imperial shuttle. He looked around and inhaled the fiery ash. It burned his nostrils. Opening his yellow eyes, he scanned the landing pad in search of the Shadow Lord. Walking over to the operation chamber, he sensed his target lurking in the shadows. Following, but not engaging, a small smirk formed on his face. At long last, he would take his revenge on the Zabrak scum who had killed his master all those years ago, the demon who had killed Satine. He would take great pleasure in his death. Hearing a maniacal laughter from behind, Kenobi turned around and saw the grotesque form of Maul, his half-robotic face gleaming with a tint of lava red. Maul smiled as he approached his opponent. "I suppose you're here to kill me. Ironic how I spent all these years searching for you, and yet it would be you who went and scuffed me out. Oh, how the mighty have fallen." Kenobi's expression did not change. He stared back and spoke softly, yet his words were sharp like thorns. "Long have I waited for this moment. At last we reunited, and at last this feeble relationship will end, and your blood spilling will bring the Emperor great satisfaction." Kenobi turned and spat on the floor. Maul scoffed. "Not very Jedi-like are you now?" "Yes, I feel it, the dark side, a once foreign feeling, now a welcomed ally. I take it you seek not to end this with a meager jabs at each other. No, you wish to gut me like I did your master and your lover. Very well. Attack, Kenobi." Obi-Wan laughed. "This will be fun." Lunging at Maul, he ignited his crystal blue blade and launched a fury of strikes, each one fueled with rage matched only by Maul. Deflecting the strikes, Maul blocked a strike and kneed Kenobi in the gut, and grabbed his head and brought it to his elbow, and sent him back with a powerful kick. Kenobi staggered back. Reaching up, he felt blood trickle down his nose. A small smile formed on his face. Walking over to Maul, he sent him reeling back with a powerful force push, and followed with a swing at his chest, and after nearly meeting his intended target, Kenobi flipped over Maul and kicked him in the back and spun around, bringing his saber back, just barely grazing Maul's horns. Seizing the Zabrak with the force, Kenobi laughed as he mocked Maul. I had hoped for more of a challenge, but it seemed you had grown weak." Breaking free from his grip, Maul scowled as he leapt through the air and landed on an elevated surface, scanning his surroundings. Maul seized the metal platforming from the landing pad below and hurled them at Kenobi, who used the force and easily sent them back at Maul. Rebounding, Maul flipped over Kenobi and delivered a jab in his gut, followed by slamming his head onto the wall of the compound. Kenobi pushed himself off the wall and roundhouse kicked Maul in the face and threw him across the floor, his body slamming down as he quickly got back up. Turning his saber around, he blocked a strike and countered it with an overhead strike and grazed the old man's head. Pushing forward, Maul launched himself into the air and spun around as he kicked Obi-Wan and brought his saber down once more to push his advantage. But as they fought, Maul was rapidly being pushed back. Kenobi seized the moment and backhanded Maul across the face and used the force to pull the crimson blade from his hand. Holding Maul's sabers in one of his hands, Kenobi looked down and chuckled. Looking back at Maul, he tossed it off the balcony. Maul staggered back. Now weaponless, he quickly looked around, eyes darting to search for any other weapon. But Kenobi, instead of pressing his advantage, would throw his own saber off the balcony. The two sabers clattered on the lava banks below them. Looking around in confusion, Maul was stunned by what Kenobi had just done. Had he just disarmed himself? But Kenobi answered his unspoken question. What fun would it be to kill you with a lightsaber? Oh no, I will make this death painful. You will suffer unlike you have ever suffered. Slowly backing around, Maul, for the first time in his life, felt true fear as he looked into the lifeless eyes of Kenobi. This was no Jedi. This wasn't even human. He was a monster. Maul refused to give up, however. Charging at Obi-Wan, he fought the man bare knuckles. They exchanged jabs and uppercuts, but Maul was quickly becoming overwhelmed. He saw his advantage as he grabbed Obi-Wan's luscious hair and used it to fling him off the landing pad. A dirty trick, but one that was necessary. Maul growled, racing back to Maul, his fist connected with the man's metal faceplate, and repeatedly punched him, and brought his head down as he kneed him in the jaw. Maul fell back, his face was bloodied and bruised. But as Kenobi walked over, Maul used the Force to push him off the balcony. Maul used the Force to pull himself onto Kenobi. Seizing the moment of lost balance within the former Jedi Master, Maul kicked Kenobi off the landing pad, sending him crashing down. Maul let out a sigh of relief, but had little time to recover as soon the landing pad buckled in on itself. Maul tried to escape, but he wasn't quick enough as he plummeted to the lava banks, where Kenobi waited for him. Giving Maul no time to rebound, Kenobi was on top of him once more as he beat him repeatedly. But Maul fought back. As he sent Kenobi back with a kick to the face, Maul stood up and he used the Force to pull the saber to his hand, but it never reached it as Kenobi grabbed it mid-air and used the Force to send it flying. The lightsaber let out a small explosion as the kyber crystals cracked and melted under the intense heat. Maul looked at Kenobi. He had been beaten. Maul opened his mouth, about to beg for mercy, but no words would form. Maul, while horrified for his life, refused to beg for it in front of the man who had caused him so much pain and suffering. Instead, Maul spat. Kenobi chuckled, seizing Maul into the air and pulled him onto his grip, beginning to choke the terrified warrior. But as he closed his grip, a voice in his head appeared. Kenobi, confused, turned his head and saw the glowing blue silhouette of a man who had long been dead. Obi-Wan lost his words. Impossible, he died years ago. But he remained. Qui-Gon Jinn walked over to Obi-Wan, putting his ghostly hand on his shoulder. Even though it was never truly there in a physical form, Obi-Wan still felt it. It's time to let go. It's time to move on. Kenobi stammered. Master Qui-Gon, how? You died, I watched. Qui-Gon let out a small chuckle. I trusted the Force and it brought me back to you. Now it is time for you to trust it. Kenobi's yellow eyes faded back to their natural blue hue as Qui-Gon Jinn healed him from the dark side. I'm so sorry. What have I become? His sobs poured out as he let Maul go. Maul quickly crawled away, too afraid to even begin to comprehend what was happening. Qui-Gon Jinn then walked over to Maul. The Sith betrayed you. They had ruined your life. Don't let them tarnish any chance of redemption that may still remain. Maul replied with a shaky voice. What Jedi trickery is this? Maul looked from side to side. I killed you. Qui-Gon smiled. And I have long since forgave you for that. It is time to stop. It is time for a new beginning. And with that, something changed within Maul. Seemingly having a clear head, he frantically crawled away to his ship and left, leaving Kenobi alone with the ghost. Anakin could feel the life leaving him. He couldn't breathe. The noose around his neck tightened. As he closed his eyes, he slowly lost conscious. Then he slowly opened them and saw a landscape unfamiliar yet all familiar at the same time. He looked around and saw a tall, masked person floating. Anakin tried to call out, but he couldn't. Where was he? But as his eyes shifted back to the person, they had teleported right in front of him. Your journey is not yet finished, she spoke. The Force is strong within you. You are to beat the darkness and restore balance. You must break free of your fears and worries. Leave those chains behind. You must embrace the Force without fear, and only then can you reach your true potential. Anakin tried to speak, but he couldn't. Looking around, he thought back to everything he had to fight for everyone he had lost. A tear fell down his face as Anakin finally let go. The wills of the Force then spoke to him. Rise, chosen one, and embrace your destiny. And with that, Anakin opened his eyes and used the Force around him to free himself from the noose. Looking around, Anakin felt unlike how he ever felt before. He felt unbelievably powerful, yet in full control. Lifting his hand up, he knew what he must do, and he knew he had the strength to do it. And with that, he walked into the darkness, ready to confront the Sith. And that is part 2 of What If Dooku Exposed Palpatine as a Sith. Hopefully part 3, the final part, will not take that long to do. So, sorry again, this took a long time to do. I had a lot of unforeseen issues with everything. So, the video's out now. I really hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, it would mean so much for me if you could like and subscribe, as the script itself took me an unbelievable amount of time to record and write out. So it would really mean the world if you could like and subscribe. Let me know what you thought about this in the comments down below. I would love to see what your thoughts about what would happen in part 3. Now, before you guys ask, part 3 is fully written out. All I have left to do is record and edit. So I don't want to give any dates, but hopefully by the end of July, if not early August. So, fingers crossed. Also, the next What If that will be coming out will either be between What If Qui-Gon Jinn survived and trained Anakin, or What If Yoda returned to the temple before Order 66. And don't worry, both of them will come out, it's just a matter of what is first. And for the What If Qui-Gon Jinn survived and trained Anakin, that will be a collaboration with a longtime friend of the channel, Kenobi's Corner. So make sure to check him out. And with that, my fellow Star Wars nerds, may the Force be with you, and be ready for part 3